Right, now we are delighted to be joined by Suzanne Evans, who has just been participating in a very lively hustings in a sort of question time format after the Brexit vote. Now we've left the EU, Suzanne Evans, what Brexit do you want to see?
Look, Brexit means Brexit. It means getting out of the European Union and everything that we campaign for. I think there's a lot of talk about hard Brexit, soft Brexit. You know, it's just getting out. It's about taking back control of our democracy, about taking back control of our borders, about being able to make our own trade agreements again. Basically cutting ourselves off from the regulatory, bureaucratic stuff of the European Union that was holding us back, and being able to have a more outward-looking and better relationship with the rest of the world and the European Union. You know, we're not walking away, we can't leave the continent, we'll always be part of Europe. For me, it's a very optimistic, positive vote and a positive move that I think can open Britain back up to the wider world again instead of keeping her confined within the bounds of the European Union.
You spoke about soft Brexit and hard Brexit there, and a lot of commentators are saying that Theresa May has said yesterday that hard Brexit is going to be her option. Can she deliver on the sort of Brexit you want to see?
Yeah, absolutely. We hold all the cards. You know, there was a lot of talk during the referendum campaign about, oh, Britain, we're a tiny country, a tiny island, we can't go it alone. Well, that's absolutely rubbish. You know, we might be small in terms of land mass, but in terms of our economic clout, our defence clout, we're actually a very big country and a very important player in the world. 6 million jobs in the European Union depend on Britain's trade with the EU. You know, all those French wine manufacturers, Italian shoemakers, Spanish fruit producers, German car manufacturers. You know, anybody tries to say, oh, well, I think we're going to be a bit tough on Britain and teach them a lesson and punish them for voting to leave, is going to have any politician that tries to do that is going to have a very quick wake-up call from the real people in the European Union, the money makers, the producers, the manufacturers, the traders in the European Union, who know that we are one of their most important trade partners. So absolutely, we hold all the cards, actually.
If we get your ideal Brexit, so Suzanne Evans' best Brexit, is there a point in UKIP as a party?
I think there can be, absolutely. Indeed, you're absolutely right. You know, our raison d'etre, our whole reason for being was to get out of the European Union. But I'm working, for instance, on a big policy document at the moment about changing politics, because although taking back control, that was the big phrase, you know, taking back control from the European Union, I'm not daft enough or have such rose-tinted spectacles that I think everything's rosy here in Britain, that we still don't have a huge amount of work to do here in this country to actually particularly get politics working well again. We need to start looking at things like corporatism, that kind of revolving door, the lobbying that goes on between the public and the private sector. I don't think that's healthy for our economy. I'd like to see something that's more rooted in ethical capitalism. I think trying to get more people engaged in politics democratically. I'm actually in favour of having more referendums. Not one every week.
You touched on that in the debate, didn't you?
I did, yes. But you know, I think if people felt that they had more of a say in what happened in this country, it would re-engage people with politics. So I don't see why, for instance, at the moment, if people sign a petition, it gets debated in Parliament, and then Parliament takes no notice. You know, I'd like to see some of the most popular petitions, perhaps ones that have at least 1 million or 2 million votes, actually put to a referendum of the people. They do this in Switzerland, and it works really well. And actually, the Swiss people on the whole sort of get the answer right. And I think we need to engage people more in politics. I think we need to change the way political parties select their candidates. I think it's too easy for somebody that's a party favourite to get into a safe seat. They're then there forever. They toe the party line. I think I'd like to see politics that were a bit more spirited, and politics that was much more accountable to the electorate as opposed to the party political machine.
So what if, you spoke about the petition then leading to a referendum, people who want a second referendum, it got to that many, I mean, you're obviously not in support of a second referendum.
No, it's not the best of three. You know, this was the biggest democratic vote ever in this country, and the people decisively gave their opinion. I think there was a petition for a second referendum, but I think it was fake, wasn't it?
There was a story about that,
all sorts of people voting from all over the world, and the sort of Ramonas, as we like to call them, sending, right, this is my postcard to their friend in Chile, you know, put it into the thing in the vote. So no, we've made the decision. I don't think anybody would be asking for a second referendum if the vote had gone the other way.
So, in terms of your role in UKIP, it's been quite controversial to say the least. You're readmitted into the party now, I think, after serving a suspension, or are you?
I criticised a candidate who had made some pretty homophobic comments online, which I thought were quite despicable. And for some reason, I got suspended for that as opposed to him. But there you go, such is the weird thing in UKIP. But that suspension's run out now, and I'm very happy. I'm working in the UKIP Parliamentary Resource Unit at the House of Commons, working on policy, getting the UKIP message out there, making videos, writing papers, doing research that I hope will feed into party policy. I wrote the UKIP's General Election Manifesto in 2015. Some said it was too successful, and that's why Nigel decided that maybe he had a rival and I should be gotten rid of. But there you go, I couldn't possibly comment.
So, your relationship with Nigel Farage, obviously if you can't say too much, then don't, but what is he like as a person?
I've got a lot of respect for Nigel. He's, the tenacity that man has. He's been doing this now for what? Gosh, your levels are looking very high. Sorry, I used to work in radio, and I can just see I'm going off the scale here. No, I've got a lot of respect.
You should join our tech team. We need it.
Nobody's ever said that before. Tech is not my strong point. No, Nigel started UKIP. He's been the face of UKIP. He has taken heaps of abuse, and yet he's stuck with it, and he's fought the good fight. And he got us the referendum. There's no doubt about that. And I have to pay tribute to him for that. He's the kind of man who makes decisions very quickly, which makes him actually quite easy to work with in many respects. But the relationship we have now, I disagree with Nigel on quite a lot of things. I wouldn't be backing Donald Trump. I'll be honest, I wouldn't be backing Hillary either. But I think I don't like the idea of UKIP going even further to the right. I think we're quite right-wing enough, and I think if we're going to have a future as a professional party, we need to head more towards the centre. Extremists in parties don't tend to get elected in the long term, and I want to help UKIP get into government. That's my aim.
What's your role or your future in politics, would you say, and particularly in UKIP? Because, you were ruled out of the leadership election, which you've said you would quite like to have stood in.
I would.
You were the highest profile name on the GLA list and the mayor candidate, and that didn't go particularly well.
Well, that was when I got suspended. That's when that's when, as I said, I think somebody said, "Oh my gosh, we can't have Suzanne Evans getting elected. That would be terrible." Even though I had been elected before and actually did rather well, but. Yeah, I don't know. That's the honest answer. As I said, I'm working in the House of Commons. I'm doing my job. I love my job. I get my head down. I do what I have to do. And ultimately, it's really up for the party leadership to decide what my role is going to be. If I don't have an immediate role in politics, then to be honest, I've run several businesses in my past. I've got various ideas for businesses in my head that I'd like to do. I'm certainly not going to go away and cry. Plenty of things to be doing on. Politics isn't the only way to change the world.
Talking of other people's futures in the party, Douglas Carswell and Patrick O'Flynn. I know you get on quite well with Patrick O'Flynn. And Douglas Carswell, I assume.
Yes,
do they have futures in the party under the new leadership?
I certainly hope so. I've obviously got to know people at the top of UKIP very well over the past 3 years, and Patrick O'Flynn and Douglas Carswell are among the two brightest, most competent and likeable people that I have met in UKIP. Some people say that, talent in UKIP hasn't always been respected or rewarded, and any leader who wouldn't want to work with Douglas or Patrick, I think would be mad, frankly. And I'm very pleased to say that certainly with regard to Douglas Carswell, Diane James has made great overtures to Douglas. He turned up to speak at party conference. She went out to meet him at the door. I think that's a great sign of good things to come.
So, what would be a good result for UKIP at the next general election in 2020, or if Theresa May calls on before? I know that's a really difficult question because obviously there's a lot of second places up north, but do you think it's going to be you sort of maintaining the 4 million votes or getting more seats?
Yeah, I mean,
Getting PR, perhaps?
you know, we could increase our vote by 100% and only get 2 MPs.
Mm.
I mean, it's impossible to put numbers on these things. And also, we've only just had a general election. We are 4 years away from a general election. So it's very hard to say. I think what I would like to see, initially at least, and we've got plenty we can do in 4 years, is to get more councillors in place and to actually have a more professional party, a party that has a more grassroots, local start. And we're very good at that. UKIPers, we don't stand on ceremony. We're the kind of people that roll our sleeves up and get our hands dirty and help out in our community. In fact, one of our councillors even goes and cleans his local lavatories. He does, every week.
It's commendable.
Pete Reed, Councillor Pete Reed, I pay tribute to you, Cambridgeshire councillor. He gets out there, rolls the sleeves up, cleans the lavs. Good job.
On the future of UKIP, is it always going to be a party of ex-Conservatives? Because you were obviously in the Conservative Party, Nigel Farage. There's plenty of people, Douglas Carswell and the new leader. She speaks a lot about, Diane James, reaching out to Labour voters up north. Do you think that's achievable in a party of, you know, so-called ex-Tories? And
do you know what? I've always said that I think UKIP has far more of a future among ex-Labour voters than among former Conservative voters, and I absolutely still believe that, particularly with the Labour Party in utter chaos and disarray. You think there's infighting in UKIP? My goodness, look at the Corbynistas and Momentum versus the Blairites. It's almost, you know, almost brings you to tears, but not quite. Yeah, no, we absolutely have that future in the north, and we have great MEPs up there like Paul Nuttall, former deputy leader, Stephen Wolfe, MEP. Jonathan Arnott, again, lots of really good people in the north who I think can take the fight up there. For me, I think as the UKIP can recognise its team players and the strength that it has and the talent that it has and pull that together, we can definitely be a force to be reckoned with, particularly, as I say, with the Labour Party collapsing. The trouble with Labour is it's lost its roots. It started off as a very commendable working class, protect the people who most needed protection in society political movement. I'm afraid it's metamorphosised into something that actually only massages the backs of the rich. It's just gone the same way as many other political parties. It's lost touch with its roots. You look at the Labour MPs that are in Parliament, a lot of them are millionaires, multi-millionaires. A lot of them have never done a day's work in their life outside politics. A lot of them, frankly, wouldn't recognise a working man's club if it fell out of the sky and hit them on the head. It's the truth of it.
you wrote the manifesto in 2015 for UKIP, and grammar schools was one of the things that UKIP promised to bring back. They're being brought back now, well, if it goes through Parliament. How much of UKIP's influence was that, do you think? And what do you think of the scheme to bring it back?
Well, I think it's a great scheme. I joke, actually, that Theresa May has got a copy of my manifesto by a bedside table, and she just looks at it every night and thinks, oh yeah, let's do that one tomorrow. Because she seems to be rolling out quite a lot of it, actually. Grammar schools, it's great, as long as the system changes. I failed my 11 plus. I didn't know I was taking it, actually. I thought it was just another mock, so when I saw a couple of guys, I'm not quite sure about that. I thought the teacher will tell me that tomorrow. So the first I knew that I'd even taken the damn thing was that I'd failed. So I went off to a secondary modern and got 21 house points in my first week. Now, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm doing it to say that there were a few of us who weren't challenged. And when I eventually left that school, as much as I liked it and enjoyed it and had a good time there and learnt a lot, when I then went to sixth form college, I realised that actually I wasn't quite as bright as I thought I was, because I hadn't been challenged for 5 years. I'd always been top of the class, everything was easy. So what we suggested, and again I think Theresa May is picking up on this, is that it's not just a cut-off point at 11, that there is flexibility between comprehensive, technical colleges, apprenticeships, whatever it might be, and there is more fluidity in the education system, like there is in Germany, for instance. It works really well. And so as long as grammar schools come back with that fluidity and that ability to chop and change and switch and move people around, then I think it's a great policy.
And final question before a quick fire round to get to know you. What do you think of Jeremy Corbyn as a person and in terms of...
Do you know, it's quite funny. I was talking to my mum last night. Mum's usually voted Labour, apart from Margaret Thatcher, because she thought it was about time a woman had a go. She said, oh, I like that Jeremy Corbyn. He's an awfully nice man. I went, Mum! No, I'm sorry. Jeremy Corbyn, he's not a statesman. I don't think he's ever going to be Prime Minister for that reason alone. I don't like his his hard left attitudes, the fact he's put terrorist sympathisers on his team. I think the way in which he's threatening his own members of parliament with deselection if they don't come around to his particular way of thinking, that smacks to me of totalitarianism and Trotskyism. And so, yeah, I think that's completely wrong. It's anti-democratic. You know, the Labour Party is turning itself into an anti-democratic beast. I also think you look at Corbyn and he's not doing a thing. He's not lifting a finger to stop the vitriol and the hatred that is being unleashed by people among Momentum on Conservative voters, on UKIP voters, on other Labour voters who don't come around to his way of thinking. And any party leader that can't stand up to nastiness and viciousness on your own supporters, frankly, is no leader at all. So I'm afraid my respect for Jeremy Corbyn is, well, if it can't go lower than 0, it's 0.
Right, now the quick fire round, just to get to know you. If you were to vote in the US election, out of the 4 main candidates, who would it be?
Mr. Johnson, because I couldn't possibly vote for either Trump or Hillary.
Great British Bake Off is moving to Channel 4, and I heard you on LBC talking about this actually. Thoughts on that? Moving to Channel 4 rather, from the BBC.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work on Channel 4.
No?
I think Great British Bake Off and the BBC. The BBC's our great British institution. Bake Off's a great British institution. I think they go together like love and marriage, horse and carriage. I don't think it's going to work, particularly not with just Paul Hollywood going off on his own. But we've got the Great British Break Off.
Ooh.
Oh, when we leave the European Union. Yeah, you see, Britain is going to soar with that break off. It's going to be great.
Thoughts on cannabis decriminalisation, pro or anti?
Absolutely anti it. I was chair of the health scrutiny panel in the London Borough of Merton when I was a councillor. I looked into this. Cannabis is dangerous. It really is. People think, oh, it's just a recreational drug, it doesn't do any harm. Well, it does. And if you have an underlying mental illness, it can turn you into a complete and utter basket case paranoia. It can induce schizophrenia. It's very dangerous. And, you know, get in a car and drive when you're high. Again, you've got all that issue. We have enough drunks clogging up A&E on a Saturday night. We don't need any potheads clogging up A&E on a Saturday night as well.
Favourite TV show or film?
Oh
other than Great British Bake Off.
That's other than Great British. That's a tough one. I watch so little TV apart from Bake Off because I'm having to constantly watch politics programmes, which I do like, but they do take up quite a lot of time, so sometimes it's hard to catch up. I'm watching Our Girl at the moment, which I love. That's fascinating. Love it. Do you know that story?
I don't actually.
It's about a medic in the army who was posted out to Kenya and basically ends up being stalked by a terrorist. Fascinating, gripping stuff.
Favourite world leader?
Favourite world leader? Gosh. I think at the moment, actually, you know, it's Theresa May.
Really?
I think she's doing really well. Yeah, I think she's doing really well. Yeah.
Political idol?
I don't have any.
No?
Quite deliberately. I think I don't actually have idols full stop, and when I tell people this, they don't believe me, but I have this philosophy that you should call no man master. I think I wouldn't want anyone to think, you know, that I was their idol, because we're all human, we're all fallible, we let people down, and when you have idols, then they can let you down quite badly. I deliberately don't.
And final 2, favourite takeaway?
Gosh, favourite takeaway. I tend not to eat takeaways so much, but when I do, I probably go for a Chinese from my local kung fu, which is brilliant.
Most influential UKIP member?
Who is the most influential?
For you, or could be elected representative?
Who it should be? Well, I think, actually, I know we've already talked about Patrick O'Flynn, but Patrick is very level-headed, he's very bright, he's a great communicator, he's got an eye on the PR as well as the sort of practical policy thing, and I've only ever disagreed with him on one thing, and that's the WAG tax. This idea, Patrick thinks that we should charge more VAT on luxury goods. I think that's wrong, because I think, why penalise somebody that saves up their cash to buy a little luxury? But that's the only thing I disagree with Patrick on. Usually he's 100% right on everything else.
And Suzanne, before we let you go, a song request to go after this interview if you had to choose anything.
Oh my goodness gracious me. I'm going to have to think of something political now, and I can't think of anything. I'm very bad at songs, actually. My goodness, the song request. I mean, one of my favourite songs of all time is Ultravox's Vienna.
Okay.
But that's got nothing to do with politics. But maybe I could spin it and say, okay, well, we still love Vienna. We're leaving you, Vienna, in terms of the European Union, but we're still with you 100%.
Suzanne, thank you very much for joining me.